Hey, what's happening? It's me, Srax again. And as you see, well, I say it's time for another car talk. The show that isn't show, but makes for a great intro, but I'm not in the car. I'm actually house sitting. Family member is in the hospital. So I'm basically here, just taking care of their affairs, cleaning up stuff, and making sure Jewel doesn't get depressed. And this is Jewel. Say hi to Jewel. Jewel is the bane of my existence right now because I'm covered in a lot of cat hair because of you. Just covered in cat hair. You're getting a bath later, you know that, right? It's serious enough. That's basically the most I'm going to say. So my living in the car escapades kind of have come to an abrupt pause. Didn't really see that happening, but and my relatives, I'm always the reliable one. Always. But now that we got that out the way, let's just hop right into the topic. As you see, it's pretty much about using your voice. And we're in unprecedented times. At least it seems like we're in unprecedented times. Like, to me personally, I just feel like this is the culmination of everything that America has been just coming to a forefront, between Japanese internment, slavery, Jim Crow, Trail of Tears, how we treated the Chinese workers during the early 1900s, the labor strikes, blah, 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 Civil War, all that stuff. It's everything coming to the head because this country and its, American individual and American exceptionalist mythos, geez, I couldn't get that out, as well as rugged individual, as well as, sweeping everything under the rug, it's finally come to a head. I say Donald Trump he's not the problem, he's a symptom. He's the true face of America to me personally. But we're in the times where, as you see by the title, you have to use your voice. One thing I started doing, like when I called myself taking the channel seriously and I started living out the car and everything, because, as I've told the story before, being fed up with family, looking at rent prices, and I'm not spending money on that and blah, 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 blah. I'm covered in so much cat hair, it makes me want to sneeze. But as I was saying, with me like living in the car, fed up with family and other stuff and rent prices and blah, 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 blah. One thing I wanted to do was tell my story. And the idea of even telling my story, at least in this format, originated from a guy I had ran into who was drunk, mind you, when I had my cameras and gear and I was in downtown Trenton. And I was like, just taking pictures of stuff and whatnot. And there was an event going on. And the drunk guy walked up to me and he asked me, like, what was I doing? And I was just telling him, like, just looking for things that are interesting, trying to find a story to tell a story of the city. And long story short, he asked me, was like, oh, really? So what's your story? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, what's your story? I'm like, shit, I don't know. And his drunken wisdom is like, you should find your story first, tell your story. Once I started living in the car, that kind of like the light bulb went off. Maybe I should tell my story maybe I should tell my story when it, in regards to this. With everything I've talked about, I've always kept it grounded. I've always kept it within, the reality. And it's politically aligned because of that, whether I'm talking about the socioeconomic system, socioeconomic issues that we're having, whether it's, more people live in their car because of the price of rent, people losing their jobs, or my experiences, family members, situations, generational curses, all type of things that, I would speak of. And that's why this video has to be made. Because one of the things that happened, or one experiences I had, I meant to say, is when I talk about how I went off to university, family got evicted, right? And I pretty much was living in extended stays with them and other stuff because I put all my money towards school. And I mean all of it. That was something that after I left community college, I'm like, this is something I need for a change. And it was the greatest thing I did for me because it allowed me to grow up here. Not just my skill sets as an artist, but up here is where I had the most growth. But there was a person I had met, and I'm going to use her as a catalyst to like jump all this off. There's a lady that I had met at the one extended stay we was at. And she was a older lady. So if I'm in my, mid to late 20s, say she had to be like late 40s, maybe 50s. Very nice woman. I mean, incredibly kind soul. I loved talking to her. She was a white lady. She ended up there not because she was a drug addict, not because she didn't want to work, not because, she was a bum to society, which is like how a lot of people will view people in these situations, but because she came from an abusive household. Her husband was abusive, and she didn't end up there through a welfare group, like a social service, a government funded social service group. As much she ended up there through a domestic support group. Her and her son, her college age son, there. And speaking to her, like I said, completely kind soul. Got to learn her story, learn mine, blah 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 blah. I'd always talk to her like while she walked her dog and everything else. But a situation had happened. Pretty much like out of the blue, she had a medical situation. It was autoimmune disease, just like came out of nowhere, as far as everybody knows. Then one day she's out and about, okay, like she worked, she had a job, like she was just basically trying to navigate because she couldn't be in the household anymore. Husband took the house, everything else, and obviously domestic abuse. So, she dealt with a lot of mental PTSD because. What the fuck? Who's calling me? Well, that caught me off guard. I did not realize while using this third-party recording app that calls could go through. But as I was saying, she dealt with a lot of mental PTSD from that and everything. So maybe all the stress and whatnot was a contributing factor to why she had autoimmune disease. Who knows? But for whatever reason, it happened. Just wasn't feeling good. Hair started falling out. So she had short hair, which was just had short hair and whatnot. But then suddenly she's bald and everything else. And I'm thinking she might have had cancer. But then, when we got to talking one day, it was no, she had autoimmune disease, just out of nowhere. Now, suddenly she can't work anymore. Suddenly she actually has to help, has to rely on government services and everything. Cause that pretty much, that right there turned her life upside down. And it just happened just like that. And I bring that up to go because there are a lot of people around this country in situations like that. There are a lot of people who fall between the cracks per se. A lot of people whose stories, have a lot of twists and other things because the propaganda that mainstream media, politicians, everybody likes to put out, it's not necessarily true. Life isn't black and white. Life is a spectrum. Life takes a lot of twists and turns, and that's one of the reasons I always wanted to keep things grounded in reality, to always showcase that. But people like her, and I don't know where she is right now, and I hope she's doing well, those are people who are suffering, or who are going to suffer the most by these attempts to cut things like Social Security, medical services, and everything else. The cruelty is the goal. These people, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, all the other billionaires, everybody who's funds that donates to not just the Republicans, but also people like Chuck Schumer and whatnot, and I will talk about him soon. They don't care about any of us. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They don't care about the people that voted for them. They don't care. They just care about money because that's all they worship. They just worship money because they don't have personality. There's nothing interesting about them. If you saw Bezos before he started getting roided up, he was a nerd. No, he looked dorky. Then he finally goes bald, starts pumping iron. We know he did roids. This is genuine muscle. This right here is because I like to eat pastries, but I worked for this. I played sports, I did things for this. He got rich and then decided, man, I need to look away. You get what I'm saying? Same with Elon Musk, who his whole life story is about him being completely unlikable. Zuckerberg gets called a lizard because his personality is lacking, and he almost, for a brief moment, started getting brownie points from doing jujitsu and everything else, and then he pretty much killed that by being Lizard Man again. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing interesting about them, and they know this. So the one thing they chase is money, to the detriment of other people, to the suffering of people. Seeing Elon on Piers Morgan crying about, no, Tesla's never did anything to anybody. We're a peaceful company. I've never done anything wrong. It's yes, you have. That's a complete blatant lie. You've scammed people out of money time and time and time again. And yes, there's a sucker born every day. And some people, If they're not going to do their financial due diligence, that's just the repercussions of it. But what about situations like, him getting involved with ruining California's high-speed rail project? Who does that affect now? That doesn't affect the suckers. It doesn't affect the marks. No, that affects the everyday person. That puts continues actually the damper on our public transportation as a nation, because if it doesn't happen over there, then it probably won't happen over here. And Lord knows the Northeast, we have public transportation, but we need better public transportation. You know what I'm saying? Hiring a bunch of children, and I could say that now because I'm turning 33, 18, 19-year-olds to find inefficiency, and you're really just gutting everything because they need their tax cuts. They're going to get their tax cuts, so they got to make up for that budget somewhere, and they're just eliminating people's jobs and eliminating social services, as well as the fact that the Republicans for the longest time have wanted to eliminate Social Security, like since it was first eliminated. It's enacted, as well as, I'm trying to get rid of other like welfare programs, because pick yourself up by your bootstraps, which is the biggest irony of it all, as they get social welfare all the time. The cruelty's meant is what I'm trying to say, because none of us matter. We're just gears in a system. We're just worker bees, worker ants, whatever, way you want to describe it. But there are people with actual lives and families and, stories that are being hurt by that suffering. I, for the first time, called a senator. I called Chuck Schumer, and that's why I said he was going to come up later, because his support of the continuing resolution, I had to say something on it. I basically called him a traitor. I said he's part of the reason why things have gone the way they have. I said he is called him paid opposition, because he is. I don't think he's doing what he does because he's ignorant. I think he does what he does because he has donors, rich donors. And he really couldn't care less how things go, because at the end of the day, no matter what happens with the continuing resolution, Medicaid, Social Security, whatever, Chuck Schumer's going to be rich regardless. He doesn't mingle among us common folk. So I felt the need to speak up and finally use my voice, actually calling in, because I never call in. I had to get it off. I had to get it off my chest. And that's why I'm also making this. I would love to just be making videos of me just sleeping in the car, living in the car, traveling the country, and, talking about not just, the rent prices and things that are passionate to me, but also making travel videos. I'm making videos, try to entertain and other stuff. And I'm still planning on doing that. I have things written, and, for me, it's all experimental. But at the end of the day, the serious issues can't be ignored. Me personally, I can't ignore them. I'm not the type of person to just sit idly by and let things happen. And like I said, I'm not an American first person. You'll never see me wrapped around in an American flag going USA, USA, besides doing it ironically, because I don't really have a lot of love for this country as for what it represents. But I care about my fellow person. I care about my community. I care about the people I've met and people I haven't, personally met, but I see their stories, doing these videos, whether it's one person, one, two, three people, people share their testament on how they relate to things. Done that on TikTok as well, one, two, three people, whatever, but these are strangers I've never met before that relate to the things that I talk about, and they share their testament, whether they're living in a car, whether they've had toxic family, whether, rent prices is destroying them, blah, 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 going on other people's videos, other people's forums and things. You see how this is affecting people's fucking lives. And it's important. It's important to speak up. It's important to use your voice. In fact, I'm gonna give some more stories, because everybody's being affected. I personally don't give a fuck if a person is an illegal immigrant, as long as they're here working. Like, me personally, I don't even give a fuck about the borders and all that stuff. Like, I couldn't care less. I'm here. I'm living currently. I'm going to die one day. I'm here to make the best out of my existence, leave a legacy and try to be great. That's what I wake up and think about every day. The rest is just, societal shit. Don't really give a fuck about it for the most part. But Seeing people get their lives uprooted just because they're not somewhere legally doesn't sit right with me, especially when that person isn't the propaganda. And please believe it is propaganda. When you see them talk about, we're going after the criminals, the rapists, the gang members, that's how they can excuse it. You have to paint your target as, evil, subhuman, as somebody that doesn't contribute to society or in one way or another to make everything more palatable. But the reality is, a lot of people getting deported aren't any of that stuff. A friend of mine, his tattooist, recently got deported a few weeks ago. Tattooist. He worked at a tattoo parlor, at a legit tattoo parlor. Now, what his status was, I don't know. I don't know if he just overstayed his visa or whatever. I have no idea. However, he worked a legal job, doing a legal service and supporting himself. That means he paid sales tax and other local taxes, which mean he contributed to taxes in the economy. That's not a drug member. That's not a gang member. That's not a rapist. That's not a criminal. No, that's just a guy. And if you say, well, he's here illegally, well, he's a criminal. Well, you also have a guy that wasn't elected who spent $300 million because bribery is legal now, who, well, is cutting everything. So the argument of legality and stuff doesn't really work. But that man is gone. It's just uprooted out of here. And for what? The cruelty. To silence people. And I do mean silence, because at our local shop, right, and this is up on, this is in Ewing, New Jersey, North Olden. I'm completely exposing them because I'm politically tuned in. So I hear things, people tell me things, and my ears are always open. I learned that the managers there, I don't know who, but some managers there who are almost 100% racist, and I can confirm that through trustworthy sources that worked at that job, and some who do still work there, but I'm not saying any names because you never disclose your sources. But the managers there used ICE to intimidate workers because some of them, their paperwork isn't, concrete. Some of them are like in limbo or like overstayed or, whatever. And as a form of retaliation, they threatened to ship them out. ShopRite is a grocery store. Once again, these aren't gang members. These aren't rapists. They aren't criminals. No, these are people that work here. They're people who are contributing to the economy, because if they're working at the grocery store, they're helping stock. They're helping put things on the shelves. They're helping inventory, which means helping bring in the inventory. When the customers come in, hey, the inventory is right there. They go and they buy the inventory, and then they check out and all the other stuff. Sorry, I'm like stuttering and my voice is getting dry because I'm talking a lot. And then those people get paid, and then they'll probably go shop at the ShopRite. So they're continuing the economic flow. There was also another story, and I believe this is also in New Jersey, where ICE came and rounded up a group of immigrants, at a car wash because they was working at the car wash, because that's where they were employed at, because they weren't criminals, gang members, or rapists. They were employed people who were contributing to the local economy. You see the trend here. Once again, as I said, the cruelty is the point. The greed is the point. They don't care about you and I. They don't care about the elderly. They don't care about anybody. And quite honestly, we're at a point where your voice needs to be used, because in no way in fucking hell should a man who has everything in the world be allowed to rife through a system of government just so he can get more of it over the people that actually keep this shit running. Because we are all worker bees and worker hands. We're all gears in a cog. And this machine ain't really oiled well, but we keep it oiled. And I say we, I'm including myself, which I almost never do, but we keep it oiled. There's no way in hell that a man who has so much money as Elon or Bezos or whatever. So wrapping this up, because I don't want to make it too long, because I have a actual car video on a similar topic of this, and I don't want to be redundant, but that one's more involved. Use your voice is the only thing I'm asking. Speak up, speak out. Like, I know it's easy to want to just, focus on the things that make you feel well, to focus on entertainment and everything else. Hell, between like me, like writing my videos and like trying to make them more concise, not this one, this is just a person to person one, but so as I was saying, as you see, I got Jewel with me because she started coughing, and that kind of bothers me. I hope she don't have a hairball, but with all this shedding hair, probably, so I'm definitely gonna go and get a brush, start grooming her and everything else, and hope it's nothing serious. Speak up, speak out, use your voice, seriously, because as easy it is to want to just focus on entertainment and ignore things, we're at a point where ignoring stuff, and I'm also talking to you because I'm not ignoring you coughing, ignoring stuff, I don't think we're at the liberty to do that. And once again, I use we. And I almost never include myself in stuff. I like to stand back and just watch things happen. But this is definitely a we situation. And that's all I gotta say. You good? You good? You not coughing no more? So my call to action here is, to go to town halls, call your senators, send out emails, go to protests, do whatever, you can, whether it's big or small, to make your voice heard. And as cliched and corny as it sounds, to actually unite the United States. And as always, I'll see y'all in the next video. Deuces, I am covered in cat hair now.